Welcome to the Planting Seeds podcast. I am Josh Blackman and I handle sales, onboarding, and marketing for Harvest.
And I'm Nick Roberts, the Director of Operations.
The goal of this podcast is pretty simple. We want to answer questions that business owners actually have about their accountants, their CPA, their finances, taxes, and hopefully people will get an understanding of a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes and why things are the way they are in the industry. Today we're going to be talking about some of the most common complaints we hear from prospective clients. I can never get a hold of my CPA on the phone. That's legitimately one of the things that we hear the most. Nick, why do you think it is such a common frustration for business owners?
Well, anytime that you have a question that deals with your accounting or your taxes and you can't get a hold of someone on the phone, it's going to be frustrating. I mean, I think most of us think that the information that we're looking for is important and it needs to be kind of now. So
I do. I agree. I think we're also in a time period in a day and age where technology has basically given you access to people 24/7. And sometimes I think it feels like when you cannot get a hold of someone that they're ignoring you.
yes.
Um,
And it's generational too, to
Yeah.
some degree. I mean, my perspective on it as a 47-year-old is like, if like text is meant to be gotten back to you when you're getting back to it, whereas my kids think that if a text come in, they have to answer it right now, or their friends are going to think that they hate them. So
yeah, no, for sure. So my question is then, okay, so we'll just say this broadly. I would imagine that most firms are not actually ignoring their clients.
no, probably not.
Okay. We'll just say most firms are not.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
So what is probably actually happening rather than being ignored?
I think it would just depend on the year or the time of year that you're looking at. January to May is very, very busy for most accounting firms, especially if they handle tax, which most CPA firms that are not doing public accounting handle tax work.
Mhm.
So that time frame in the year is very busy. I think it depends on the type of firm that you're dealing with. If it's a single CPA and they're the only staff person, they're probably overwhelmed
Mhm.
and working. And people go into accounting more for the numbers than they do the people most of the time. I think their personalities lend it to the accomplishing of task and the creating the work itself. So while they're in those numbers or in their books for doing tax returns, they're not thinking about answering the phone. They're trying to accomplish a task.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot, but I think it's oftentimes, and it's not intentional, but it's like you get so deep in the numbers that you oftentimes sort of forget that there is a person behind the business and the numbers.
Yeah,
And it's,
absolutely. Yeah.
and I
Which
get, yeah,
which kind of leads to a complaint too, like that people just feel like a number.
yeah,
And accountants, while they're usually do actually care about their clients, numbers are the biggest portion of the work that they do.
So really, then it's less about being ignored and more about how firms have been structured.
Yeah, absolutely.
So something else that we talked about, like internally, is that a lot of firms were built for a different client expectation. I mean, we talked about that just now, even with like expectation of when text should be returned. But years ago, business owners might only talk to their accountant once or twice a year, and that was fine. Do you think that the profession as a whole has struggled to keep up with the more on demand?
To some degree,
Yeah.
it really depends on where you're located, and again, the type of firm that you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're more in a rural context, like Lake City and Live Oak, where we're more associated, the CPAs and the tax preparers are a little more traditional. Whereas if you were in a place like Atlanta or New York, those firms are a lot more modern, with modern practices and modern perspectives on how to deal with clients. So, in those firms, you might have a client relationship manager
Mm-hmm.
that specifically works to make sure that the relationship is working the way that it should, and that everybody is being communicated with. While in smaller firms, single owner firms, more rural context, you probably are dealing with something that's more traditional and not specifically built out to work on those client relationships as much as complete the work.
When you say traditional, do you think that also lends itself to the kind of technology that these firms use?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so most firms are using something like QuickBooks. Um, there are some other products out there for more what they call mid market. It's like, you have a lot of clients, a lot of staff. But for most firms, you know, 1 to 25 staff, QuickBooks is probably what they're using.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think a lot of the smaller firms have struggled over the last few years to keep up with the technology that even QuickBooks is pushing out,
Yeah.
much less other technologies that have come online that are, seeking to kind of replace some of those solutions and softwares.
Well, so with people struggling to keep up, and even with technology, we've talked about this before, but like even CPA, like in particular CPAs, they're the numbers are dwindling, which I
Yeah,
think I think we've seen a little bit of it, not as much here in the area, but it's starting to happen more. Is that CPAs are like selling off their book of businesses, or they are retiring or closing up. Do you think that shortage has an impact too on how people are trying to get a hold of
absolutely. Um, Something like 60% of the current roster of CPAs are set to retire in the next 10 years,
Wow.
and they're not being replaced by kids coming out of school. Most most college students are not focusing on accounting as a subject to focus on anymore. They're looking, if they are into like a finance sort of concept, they're looking at, you know investments and other things because they're, I don't know, a little more exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're not replacing CPAs as fast as they used to replace CPAs. Not as many people are getting into tax preparation. They
Mm-hmm.
just think it's going to be boring, and it's it can be if you know um, just depending on your roster of work. But at the same time, like, it can also be very exciting to you know get into a set of books and fix things, and then you know be able to prepare a tax return, especially if you've had some sort of advisory solution that you've been providing for that client where you're planning ahead and
Mm-hmm.
not just reporting what happened. Then you can save clients a lot on their tax burden at the end of the year, and that's always kind of a good feeling.
Yeah.
Can be exciting.
Yeah. Speaking of like advisory and things like that, another complaint that we hear often is that this is with clients who have current CPAs or have had them in the past. It's like, why did I get billed for a 5 minute call? Um, I think that one surprises people that they are getting charged for a phone call. Their perspective is that they ask a quick question and then a week later they get an invoice. Um, Again, I think that's probably due to how things are structured, but could you explain why that's sort of common in the industry?
Sure. The traditional model has been an hourly billing model for years and years. So when you have an engagement with a CPA or a CPA led, specifically a type of accounting firm, they're basically doing some work for you and then tracking how many hours that took that for that month and sending you an invoice. So your fee every month can go up and it can go down based on the number of hours that were required to get the work done. If you had a very busy month, you should expect that that bill is going to be higher.
Mm.
But because of that, there's no padding that's built into um, the engagement for conversations or advisory or researching the answer that you asked, because it wasn't just something that had a basic answer. So because of that, CPA firms typically will bill for those conversations. More modern firms and firms that have a little bit different pricing structure will sell a package for advisory where you can ask questions and it's included. They will also do your bookkeeping um, as a fee that's fixed every month based on usually gross revenues of your company.
Mm.
So that it's consistent. You know what's happening with it every month. There's no surprises. anything else that's done, whether it be tax planning or whatever, each thing is kind of sold as its own individual service. So, and they usually have like a flat fee that's associated with it so that you can know what's coming every month and be prepared for that.
I was going to say for business owners though, like it makes it really hard to budget. If you like, because I mean, again, you probably know that coming up tax time, you're going to have more conversations
Mm-hmm.
just by the nature of it. But it's like you don't know what those conversations look like, and it's like you could go from no conversations a month to like 12, and it's like that's a huge bill, and it's hard to budget for.
Right.
And I mean, you would think as accounting, and CPAs, it'd be like let's help them budget, but
Which
it,
would then be associated with another fee,
yeah,
unless
exactly.
it was something that was already included with the package that you.
Yeah, and I like, and again, I get, and I think most business owners get that when they are signing up for a service, they're paying for an expertise. Like,
Yeah,
they are paying for someone that knows what to do and how to do it and to take that off their plate. I mean, that's a given. Um, I think the frustration is that they don't realize they're going to be charged for everything. And I think that even if you tell them, I mean, we have experienced this. You can explain something to someone, and they say in the moment that they get it, and maybe they do, but they don't really understand what you're trying to tell them. And sometimes it's just because it's industry terminology, and sometimes it's like they're already overwhelmed with the 50 other decisions they're making. Um,
absolutely.
and that sort of comes back to what we were just talking about, but it's we have our prices set up on like flat fees and things like that. Is that Do you think that part of the issue with current accounting firms is that we don't set expectations correctly, or that customers don't understand the expectations?
Both,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that for years and years, CPAs were someone that you saw once a year, maybe twice. You brought them a stack of receipts and your bank statements, and they, created your books for you and did a tax return, and you paid them whatever that fee was, and then you were out. At some point, um, CPA firms and accounting firms got into doing more of like bookkeeping, and everybody has sort of an idea of what a bookkeeper is,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody really knows what a bookkeeper does. And so whether whether that's somebody that's literally just categorizing the transactions that come through your bank account, or if there's someone that provides services like payroll, filing sales tax, helping with annual reports every year that are due to the state or whatever. Each of those things comes with some expertise, and you've got years and time and practice with that, and so people obviously would want to bill for that if they do those services.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if you were a a roofer or something like that, and somebody wanted shingles and soffit, you're going to charge them for the materials for that and the time that goes into it, or anything that you do that's a business, you're going to want to be compensated for your time and your materials. Um, so I think there is sort of a disconnect in what people understand about accounting. I also think there's been this lack of communication or education that's happened from the accounting world
Mm-hmm.
to help people understand the value and the expertise that goes into it. So
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know just for me personally, coming from the perspective of someone who was running a business and trying to do bookkeeping and accounting on my own, it's like you get this sometimes you get the impression that like everything is so complicated that it can't be done, and it's like I'm a person who is like, oh, I can figure it out. But the thing is, I think there's a disconnect between I can do it myself and the time spent on it versus paying someone who knows what they're doing and getting that expertise. Because it's like, there's a lot of things that you and I both are like we can figure it out, and that's
absolutely.
I mean that's just sort of our personality, is that if we think for remotely that we can do it, we can. But it's
So
like I agree that I think a lot of CPA firms put accounting and bookkeeping in this like mysterious light that makes it where you think you can't understand any of it, and that's a huge problem for clients, because it's like if you can't understand any of it, then you're just getting reports that don't matter to you.
yeah,
And I like you mentioned communication, but I think it goes beyond just communication. It goes to like visibility and understanding, because how are you going to know the numbers that you're getting if you don't understand the reports? I sat down with someone the other day, and they were basically showing me the reports their CPA had sent them, and it was like, I don't even know what this means. And I'm like, that's a waste of everyone's time and money if you don't know what those reports mean. But I like, and sort of that brings me into like what we do differently and why we structured it the way we did. What was the thought process in setting up Harvest to where it wasn't billable hours and it wasn't like a nickel and dime for everything?
Um, so one, the billable hour thing can get out of hand in a hurry, um, and then at the same time, if a month is particularly light, then you know, then your billable hours go way down. So there's just way too much fluctuation in recurring revenue or billable revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, part of that was being able to budget properly and plan ahead, and kind of know where we were month to month without having to guess what was actually going to be billed and what was going to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
So all of our engagements are set up so that you pay for the month that you're going into.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the billable hour is you get a bill at the end of the month or at the beginning of the month for last month's work. And then, sometimes those bills don't get paid for a month or even two. And then you're getting calls from your CPA for
Yeah.
sure. Or his cousin.
Suddenly the phone works.
All of a sudden the phone works. Um, and just to make sure that the staff that we had always knew that their income was secure. And it's also, I think it's, so let's put it this way. I think that when you have billable hours, if you don't have the right staff, they may say it took longer than it really did, and then you're billing for stuff that really wasn't done, and that's not fair to the client. So I think it was just the most fair way that we could come up with a system that fit for not just um, one client, but for all clients across the board, that they know their billing from us is going to be the exact same as the next guy for the same amount of work, regardless of what industry you're in or how good you are at running a business. If you're a new business owner or an established business owner, those fees are associated with are all basically the same, right? Not to say that they're the same for everyone, but like where you are in your journey, like your business's gross revenues per year, makes that where if you had a company that makes $1 million gross revenues a year and another company has the same revenues, your accounting fee from us will be the same.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was more equitable, more fair for the clients, and then kind of protected against those billable hours that.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, like, I definitely agree with that, but I also think at the end of the day, like, while I do agree with it being like fair, I think one of the things too is I think it enables us to give better service because it enables better communication. Because the thing is, if we talk about it a lot. Bookkeeping is basically we are looking at what's already happening. Advisory and is trying to figure out and help prevent things moving forward. You know, However, when you're afraid to call your CPA or accountant because you're afraid you're going to get billed to ask a question, you're making the mistake without ever getting the opportunity to like fix it. And you're just cataloging it at the end. And I think when you don't bill by the hour and you tell your clients that like, hey, communication is really important to us too. We do want to talk to you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to know what you're thinking. We want to know if you're planning on buying something or investing. I think that makes I think that makes their business better, and I think it makes us better at our jobs to have all the information.
Yeah. And it does work both ways
Yeah.
as well. So like sometimes clients don't communicate as well either. Like you just said, thinking about buying something or investing in some other part of your business. Whenever we find out about that after it's a set like done and has already hit the bank account, um, it makes it harder for us to plan ahead and do things. So like going back to what we talked about before about the communication from the accountant or the education aspect of the accountant. I think there's a lot of times where, for the most part, the only time you hear from your accountant is like when your reports are done, and they give you a call maybe, or they just send you a PDF of your
Mhm.
reports that you don't understand, or then whenever they do call you or talk about it with you, they use jargon that you don't understand, because it's industry specific
Yeah.
to the accounting world, so you don't understand what they're saying. So like, and then at the end of the day, sometimes the only time they really call you is when they need something for you to do right now, and you're a busy business owner that doesn't have time to just stop
Yeah.
and find some receipt from a month ago. So a lot of times it's like, it's always like, seems like it's just, they need something, they want me to do this, they're not communicating in a way that, so like a lot of business owners then get to the point where it's like, well, I don't want to talk to them either,
Yeah.
and so then like that kind of resentment grows, and that's how you end up with, people looking for a new CPA or tax preparer or accountant at the last minute when taxes are due like
Yeah.
tomorrow, which is never good for anybody.
No. So speaking of that, like let's, if you, in general, we want people to look for a new accountant or an accountant or a CPA long before tax season.
Oh,
Just
absolutely.
just because, like, don't put yourself in that stress. But what are some things that like someone should be looking for if they are looking for a new CPA or accountant, or if they're looking for the an accountant or a CPA for the very first time?
I think it just depends on the person. Um, if you're if you're a business owner that basically has your business, whatever industry you're in, kind of down, and you know what's happening, and you can be happy with just communicating as needed, and that's what that CPA or accountant provides. You're not someone that's looking for technology that can help streamline things for you or whatever. There's always people that match, even if it doesn't match what we would want to do as
Mm-hmm.
an as a firm. But it's just really, you got to find someone that fits with you.
Yeah.
If you sit down with the person and you're comfortable and you can work with their structures and systems, then that's great. If you go to someone and it just makes you feel uncomfortable with, like, they're going to be asking me all these questions or whatever, and the right CPA, right accounting firm, tax preparer, whoever can make it an easy transition.
Yeah.
You just got to find the person that makes it the easiest for you.
I think sometimes, because like, we see a lot of information about people. We
Yeah,
see their financials. We see all of that. We know a lot about them, And I'm like, again, we're professionals, and we'd never talk about that. But I think that's a big step for a lot of people, and it's like, I think it's one of those that if you don't feel right about that person, or if you do feel uneasy, it makes it real. It makes that relationship start off tense already.
yeah,
And like so one of the things, or some of the things that we ask or we like to talk about is like, how do you communicate? Is it phone, text, email? Do you schedule meetings? How do you do that? We like to meet people in person as often as we can, but we also do video. We can do text. We can do email. We of course do phone. But it's like, I think going into it, again, it's all about setting expectations, and it's expectations on communication. It's like, yeah, we're going to stop by your office. Yeah, you can come by ours, or we'll meet you for coffee. We do love a coffee meeting, but
absolutely. I mean, there's just something about the in-person meeting where you're getting the full experience.
yeah.
Something that technology has sort of largely taken away from
Mhm.
us as a society. And there's nothing wrong with a Teams call or a Zoom call. Those are necessary because you can't always get away in a time that works for everybody
Mhm.
for a meeting. But I would always rather sit down with someone in person and,
Mhm.
and actually get to know them when possible,
Yeah.
than just trying to give you an idea of what we can do for sure. But if you don't feel comfortable with us, then that it's never going to work in the long run.
No.
So like, to make things the best as possible for all of our clients, my perspective is we'll just meet you where you're at. If you are a phone person, great. If you work with text, awesome. If you're an email person, we can email. At the end of the day, for things like reports and or advisory work, I think it's best to hear the voice.
Mhm.
If you can see the person, that's even better. But if that's not you,
Yeah.
that's fine.
And here's the thing. I think it's really important to just like create this. Another expectation is that not every client is right for us either. that's part of why that in-person meeting is really important for us. It's like there are times where we meet with people and it's like sounds really good on paper, but we meet with them and like they're not a good fit for us.
Right.
And it's going to happen. And I like it is nothing against them or their business. I just think, I think everyone should be on the same page about what works best for them, and
Absolutely.
that's sort of what we try and find, because it's like, again, we know a lot about your business. We hope to learn a lot about you. We know a ton about people's families. We know, when people have babies or when people are out sick. It's like when people are in the hospital. Those are things that we know about, just, as a part of keeping up with them. And I think that's important. And if you can't be comfortable with us knowing that, then we don't want you to be our client and be uncomfortable,
Yep.
because it just, again, you're going to end up not wanting to talk to us. So and it's like, we're going to miss out on stuff, and it could be expensive,
It can be expensive.
Yeah.
For sure.
The other one, then, and this is not a dig on any other firm. And it's like, I'm sure in the past we've had our own issues, because everyone does, but it's like, let's say that let's say someone calls after hours, leaves us a message or shoots us an email. What is a realistic time frame to hear back from someone, even in busy season?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. A lot of firms will put you into a communications schedule that is based on the tier that you're paying for.
Yeah.
Um, I think realistically, to an email, especially in busy season, maybe 48 hours would be the max that I would be comfortable with letting someone not have an answer from me. To me, I would probably email them back at some point during that first day and say, hey, I'm gonna look into this. I'll get you an answer by
Mm-hmm.
this time. Um, that because to me, like, I don't want someone to think that they were just left on unread or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So phone calls, text messages, whatever it is, email. Um, you know, I would rather take a minute and get the right answer with a little bit of research and understanding the exact context that the question is being asked in, than to just kind of give you an off the cuff answer and you expect that that's gospel.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for me, it's like I would probably within the day,
Yeah.
depending on what time of day it is and what I am doing. If I'm in the office or if I'm out visiting with clients or whatnot, it might be the next day. But I'm going to respond and say, hey, got your email, got your text. Give me a reasonable amount of time to look into it for you, and then I'll have an answer for you.
Yeah. No, and I think I think that's the right answer. That's sort of how I approach things. I'd rather email back and be like, hey, swamped, can I get back to you tomorrow?
Yeah.
And like, at least let them know I saw it. But I do, like, and this is just I think, and I'm going to credit you with this for just creating the work environment that we have. But I'm like, in general, we are more than happy to schedule an after hours appointment if necessary. But like, we leave at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then we come in at 5, and that's our work day. And I'm like, I understand that not every business operates that way, but that if you upload files to us at midnight, then we'll talk to you the next day.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
like that is one of the huge benefits of technology, is that there's a 24-hour cycle. However, you may not be able to get a hold of us 24/7, but you're going to be able to hear back from us and get that taken care of.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think just sort of like overall, what we've talked about in this one is like the biggest takeaway is, I think when looking at finding a CPA firm or an accountant, I think communication is going to be key.
Mm-hmm.
And that does not always mean the cheapest one. It also doesn't always mean the most expensive one. It really is dependent on what you're looking for, whether it's the service model, the communication. I mean, price does matter. You may be in a situation where you need more than what you can afford, and that happens sometimes. And I know we do our best to work with that, but at some point, it's just like, we're not the right fit for you. But it really comes down to, what does your business actually need, and how can we help you? And that sort of,
Right.
You talked about, and this is more internal jargon, but it's like, why do you want to be our client, and why do we want you as our client? There's got to be a fit there, and I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
Anything else that you like just sort of want to add about like the thought about how firms work, or what we've missed, or what we've covered, just to like if just to like nail it down with one sentence, like if you're looking for an accountant, this.
You just got to be prepared to do the work.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, especially getting started, if you are a newer business or you've been around for a little while and you don't have books established, there's going to be some work that goes into getting that done.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need to expect phone calls and emails requesting things. A good firm will have some sort of system where you can upload directly,
Yeah.
so that you don't have to worry about, delivering a stack of papers or emailing stuff that might have sensitive information on it. That's important. That's an important aspect for. Like, we have our client portal for that specific reason. Um, but yeah, just be prepared to put in the work, um, and then don't find a CPA or an accounting firm that isn't prepared to put in the work for you. Communication and all of that is great, but um, if you get the feeling that you're just a number or you're just the next check mark on a box, you're not going to be happy with that. Most people won't be happy with that. I wouldn't be happy with that.
No.
So just find the right fit for you with people that you think you can trust, and make sure that you are communicating and building that relationship with your accountant in such a way that trust is being built, and you can work within those systems and figure that out, because
Yeah.
it'll only make you a better business owner. It'll only make you better at what you're already doing, and typically it frees up the time where accounting would be being done, after hours or whatever. Frees up that time for you to do the stuff that you actually want to do,
Yeah.
which is run the business that you started because you wanted to get into that particular field or industry.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes things a little better if somebody else is handling that back end, and it's somebody that you can trust.
That's awesome. All right. Well, if you have enjoyed our episode today, you can subscribe and follow along. We're going to hopefully do more of these. This was just our first pass at it, so if it's clunky, just forgive us. But if there are any questions that you have that you would like us to answer, the next go round or the next time we have sort of a open Q&A kind of session, we'd love to hear what your thoughts are or your questions are with accounting or CPAs or budgeting or advisory. Yeah, thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.